What if you don't need to live in pain and suffering? What if you could give up your karma and have a life of abundance and joy? What if you could start creating magic and miracles that you never thought were possible? Get ready to listen, share, and experience the magic that is you. Now, here's the host of Creating Abundance with Ease radio show, Dr. Helen Gitlevich.
Welcome, I'm Dr. Helen Gitlevich on Creating Abundance with Ease. And today our show is, What is Allowance? But before we go to the show, let me tell you a little bit about me. I am a medical doctor who at some point had open heart surgery and became Access Consciousness Facilitator, Akashic Record teacher, 3-day body facilitator, founder of School of Akashic Records, podcast host, and so many other heads, just to kind of allow, and this is the topic of our show, for the tools of all those modalities, techniques to create my life. And now I'm teaching classes around the world, doing private sessions, to invite people to a different possibility with their life, with their health, with their relationship. And it's such a gift a lot of time to see people's lives change. So what is allowance? How is it different from acceptance? Is it being doormat, or is allowance something that can create ease in your life? Let's play with the tools of the week and create more for us. And before we went on the show, I looked up the definition of words. You know, like throughout a lot of my shows, I kind of like give a little definition here and there because definition has changed. A lot of people don't realize that words have vibrational meaning that was changed in 1946 with one of the conferences where people decided that words should not be used as a force like Hitler used. So they changed the dictionaries. And so now I found out through Access Consciousness, which was founded by Gary Douglas and co-founded by Dr. Dane Hare, I found out that we need to look up the definition in dictionary before 1946 or look at the original meaning of the word. And so I did that today. And what I found out was very interesting. Acceptance, or accept, to accept, is to take. And allow is to permit or to approve. How interesting. And that's not how those words are kind of used in our reality. They're used a lot of times interchangeably, which is they're not. Allowance is about actually allowing people to do what they need to do, no matter how painful it is for us to watch them destroy their lives. Acceptance is actually being a doormat. Acceptance is part of a lot of what spiritual modalities are teaching us, or at least the understanding of the teaching, where in order to be the good, enlightened person, you have to accept what's going on in your life, and you have to go along with that no matter how much abuse you take. Allowance is not. Allowance is pretty much, if you're doing this to me, if you're abusing me, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kind of like, you're not permitted to do something to me. You can do it to others if they allow you, but not to me. It doesn't work for me. So how does it look? Gary Douglas in his workshops talk a lot about his son. When he was drinking, he would come home drunk and he would verbally abuse Gary. So he said, when you're drunk, don't come home. So he asked, where is your allowance? He's like, oh, I'm in total allowance if you're drinking. But if you're drinking, don't come home. That's my allowance. So how do we go about our lives when we actually react to what people do, especially when it's in our house, especially when we depend on them for something, either money, relationship, love, or something else, and we don't want to kick them out of the house, especially if it's a child. How do we be in allowance versus acceptance? And what is allowance truly? Allowance is an interesting point of view when we don't have positive or negative charge about that. So how can we be that? It's about getting out of the wrongness and the rightness. Because a lot of times we get angry and frustrated with people because we feel we are right and they're wrong. That's not allowance. This is pretty much proving our rightness of our point of view. And how much anger and frustration do we feel when it actually going on? And how miserable do we feel? And how much of energy are we wasting on those emotions? And a lot of them are just implants and explants, meaning programming, that maybe go all the way back to our childhood, maybe even before previous lifetime, or maybe that person and we created that dance, that they do something, we react. And unless one of us stops, the dance will continue. Can we create something different and greater if we are doing the dance? We're pretty much busy continuously dancing with that person. He does something, we react. We react, they do something more. Then we react more, and then it escalates until we are frustrated and a lot of times paralyzed. I know I've been there, done it, have a t-shirt to show for it, and not doing it again. Well, I wish. Yeah, right. Still doing it. Maybe not to the same extent, and a lot of times recognizing it sooner than later. One of the examples was a few years ago. I had an episode. I went with my daughter to vacation, and it was cold. It was in Australia. We were supposed to go to the Southern Sea, and it was raining. And I asked her to wear a coat, just like good mother would, right? And she said no. The first was reaction. It's like, you need to wear a coat, right? No. So I went into the tool, and that's a tool that I would like to invite you. So what I did, I looked at what judgments do I have about me being a good mother, about her being a good daughter, about discipline. And granted, she was 20 years old, an adult. And I still was in that perpetual mother takes care of the child routine. Even now, I catch myself doing that. So we went to breakfast, and probably throughout the breakfast, it took me about, I want to say, 20 to 30 minutes to go to kind of like bringing up all the judgments I had about the situation, about my daughter, about me being a mother, about her being a good daughter, and about cold, about her getting sick. There was so much there. And at some point, it shifted. And I'm like, okay, she's an adult. And she can choose for herself what she does or doesn't do. And that was a total allowance, because I didn't have the positive or negative polarity of what she should or shouldn't do. And suddenly she looked at me and was like, Mom, you know what? I think I'm going to wear a coat. That was a crucial moment for me. Yes, it is a small episode in the life of mother and daughter. Yes, it's a small episode in my life and her life, but it's a clear example of when we have a point of view, the other person does not have a choice. And that translated into a situation which we had this year when my daughter had cancer. And I had the point of view of what she needed to do, and she had the point of view what she needed to do or not do. And it was total butting heads. Seriously. Two deer on, or whatever, like those animals are, that fighting. And I needed actually somebody else to ask me certain questions. And again, it was about judgments. It's about judging what's right, what's wrong, and letting go of them and letting them choose to be in total allowance of what they're choosing. And guess what? My daughter chose for her what actually would create more, which she resisted and reacted to me suggesting it. So allow is to permit other person to be themselves. So what happens to us when somebody else does not permit us, that trying to push their point of view on us? Are we accepting it and doing what they do? Or are we resisting and reacting to that and do the opposite, even if it means to damage us, to hurt us, to abuse us, and do something that would create disasters for us? A lot of times, at least for me, if somebody pushes their opinion on me, I would do the opposite, no matter what it actually the end result. I wouldn't even get an option of looking at the energies in the past. It would be just like, nope, you're telling me what to do? Pretty much, fuck you. And that created so much of turmoil in my life that now I realize that a lot of my problems were stemming from the resistance and reaction and or alignment and agreeing. And that's not allowance, because we can allow other people to do what they need to do, but we also can allow us to choose no matter what other people choose. That's the two sides of the same equation. We can be an allowance of their judgment. We can be an allowance of what they need to do, and yet they're not controlling us. The only time they can control us is when we allow them. And this is time for our first break of the show. When we return, we'll talk more about the difference between allowance and acceptance and what is allowance. And you've been listening to Creating Abundance with Ease with myself, Dr. Helen Gitlevich, on Inspired Choices Network. We'll be right back.
Many of us live our lives based on karma, on the past, and all the unfinished business in our lives. What would you choose if you did not have karma, or if you could choose what you desired instead? By tuning into Creating Abundance with Ease radio show with Dr. Helen Gitlevich, You'll receive tools and inspiration you can use to create the abundance in your life. You are an infinite being with infinite choices. Are you ready to have ease with creating abundance? Listen for Creating Abundance with Ease radio show every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain, and 9 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Creating Abundance with Ease show with Dr. Helen Gitlevich. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email by sending to helen.g@att.net. Now, back to the program.
Welcome forward, everyone. I'm Dr. Helen Gitlevich on Creating Abundance with Ease, and today our show topic is what is allowance. And before we went on a break in the first part, we were talking about the difference between allowance and acceptance, and how it actually, in the root of the words, that allowance means to permit and accept means to take. So with acceptance, we actually take things in, meaning we internalize, and that's where the reaction is. Because a lot of times acceptance means, for a lot of people, they show that they accept it, but there is still an internal reaction. Is it actually allowance? No, of course not. It's acceptance, because they still know what's good for the other person, what's good for themselves. And it's also a lot of times stems from we are not an allowance of ourselves. We do not permit ourselves to be who we are. If we are in total allowance of ourselves, everything becomes an interesting point of view. Because when we are in allowance, everything becomes an interesting point of view, because then we kind of like, okay, I'm me. So no matter what the other person does or says, we're still being us. Just look at that. When we are in allowance of who we are, what we are doing, nothing can touch us. Think about it. You know you're a person, right? And if somebody tells you you're a chair, would you react to that? No. But if you judge yourself stupid, or if you grew up where your parents were telling you how stupid you were, or there was something that's going on where you internalize it and what that programming, when somebody else tells you, oh, you're stupid, you react. Because somewhere you already judged yourself stupid. And that's not allowance, because you say, okay, I'm an allowance of them calling me stupid. Not really, because you don't have allowance for you. Because if you knew you're not stupid, because all of us are smart and wonderful, but we have those programming that limits us, that make us play out the role that we took on from other people. That's where allowance and acceptance differ. Because in acceptance, what we did, we took on those judgments. And that's the acceptance, to accept, to take in, to take on, to internalize. Allowance is, where is that definition, is to permit. Permit them think whatever they want. Permit them to say whatever they want. Permit them to act the way they desire. But for us also to permit being us. One of the ways to look at that and clear it is the tool of the week, as I said, interesting point of view. And it's actually a tool. The way it works, you look at a point of view or a judgment or something the person does or doesn't do. You look at that and say, either silently in your head or aloud, whichever is easier for you. It's interesting point of view. I have this interesting point of view. Interesting point of view, he, she, or they are having interesting point of view. Interesting point of view, I have interesting point of view that they have this interesting point of view. Whew. Do you feel lighter? I do. I didn't even think of anything, but still, it made me feel lighter. So let's do that exercise with actual point of view. Think of somebody in your life that you're irritated, frustrated, don't like, annoyed. Doesn't matter what the emotions are, but you're not an allowance, or you want them to do something and they're not doing it, whatever it is. Think of them, or think of the problem. It can be anything, including lack of money or whatever. So let's do it. Interesting point of view. I have this interesting point of view. And just let it go. Interesting point of view. They have this interesting point of view. And again, let it go. Interesting point of view. I have this interesting point of view that they have this interesting point of view. Whew. Wow, that had even bigger charge on. So what if it's that simple? What if you need to repeat that 100 times? Would it be more productive than fuming? To repeat that 100 times probably will take you about 15 minutes. Maybe less, maybe a little bit more, 20 minutes. Okay, half an hour. And how long are you going to be fuming if you don't do that? How long that fuming will paralyze you? Is it worth it? Is it worth to do 20 minutes of the exercise and see what happens even if you don't believe in it? I'm just wondering. Or you're so invested in fuming. You're so invested in being angry with them. Because that anger, or at least how much you're thinking that this anger will push them to do what you need them to do. Ha, ha, ha. No, seriously. That's funny. Has anybody's anger made you do anything unless they pushed you to the brim and then you maybe did it and you were frustrated and the relationship was not great? So what if you actually be an allowance of them choosing? What if you be an allowance of them being who they are no matter what they choose? Interesting point of view. I have this interesting point of view. Interesting point of view. They have this interesting point of view. Interesting point of view. I have interesting point of view that they have this interesting point of view. What if that was that simple? What if you actually chose being an interesting point of view? And in conjunction with interesting point of view, there is also who does it belong to. It's another tool of access. I don't like using just one tool. Sometimes you need 2, 3, 5, 10 to get out of the situation. And a lot of times, if interesting point of view is not shifting it, ask, who does this belong to? Because a lot of times, that resistance and reaction or alignment and agreement might not be even yours. That fuming that you're doing might not be yours. It might be theirs, it might be somebody close to them, it might be universal or around you. Look at what's going on in the world right now with social isolation, COVID, fears, anger, shame, blame, regret, and guilt, all of those implants floating in the air. I'm talking about how many people right now feel those emotions. And those emotions are nothing more than programming that was done through media, through fear tactics of the government, through a lot of other stuff. And yes, certain things are real and certain things are fear. False evidence appears real. How many of you actually asked yourself, what is true for me? And that's where allowance comes in. Because you cannot have fear in the face of allowance. You cannot have anger in the face of allowance. When you're in allowance, you can have potency and you can do things and yell and scream, but the intensity that's there is not anger, because anger is usually implant which lasts forever or long time, versus intensity when you need to accomplish something. You might act the same way, it might feel the same way, but it's not the same way. And you know the difference because the potency, as soon as you get it out when you act, it's done. Versus if you yell and scream and it continues and you continue yelling and screaming, that's not potency, that's anger. And that's when you need to ask, what is that? What if you be present with whatever it is and be in allowance of it? But again, as I said, allowance doesn't mean you accept it. You permit it to the point where it doesn't hurt you. And when it works for you. When it doesn't, you either move away, move that person away, or yell and scream or whatever needs to be done. It's unless that person listens. If they don't, you raise the voice. So what if allowance for you is something that is about letting go of the judgment of you? What if it's about embracing everything you are, embracing all of you, and being the space of allowance, space of being? How much are we refusing to be? How much are we refusing to be us? And it's time for our second break of the show. And you've been listening to Creating Abundance with Ease with myself, Dr. Helen Gitlevich, on Inspired Choices Network. We'll be right back.
Many of us live our lives based on karma, on the past, and all the unfinished business in our lives. What would you choose if you did not have karma, or if you could choose what you desired instead? By tuning into Creating Abundance with Ease radio show with Dr. Helen Gitlevich, you'll receive tools and inspiration you can use to create the abundance in your life. You are an infinite being with infinite choices. Are you ready to have ease with creating abundance? Listen for Creating Abundance with Ease radio show every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain, and 9 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Magic and abundance are everywhere. What if you could tap into abundance and start creating your life with complete and total ease? Working with Dr. Helen Gitlevich will give you exactly that, total ease in creating abundance in your life. Dr. Gitlevich creates classes all over the world, both in person and online. She works with you to create abundance with your money, with your body, with your relationships, with all areas of your life with total ease. Connect with Dr. Helen Gitlevich at creatingabundancewithease.com. Her contribution in your world will be a noticeable gift in a very short period of time.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is the Creating Abundance with Ease show with Dr. Helen Gitlevich. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email by sending to helen.g@att.net. Now, back to the program.
Welcome forward, everyone. I'm Dr. Helen Gitlevich on Creating Abundance with Ease. And today our show topic is, what is allowance? Before we went on a break, on the first couple of parts of the show, we were talking about the difference between allowance and acceptance. How much of that goes back in time to original meaning of the two words of allow is to permit and accept is to take. And also we were talking about to have allowance of ourselves, the exercise of interesting point of view, which is a tool of the week. Interesting point of view. I have this interesting point of view. Interesting point of view. They have this interesting point of view. Interesting point of view. I have this interesting point of view that they have this interesting point of view. Whew, wow. And for you guys who join us just now, as I said, we've been on the air for about half an hour, and if you're listening later, that's fine. You can go to the beginning of the show in the recording pretty much everywhere on every sound platform like iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, and also TV programs on Smart TV, and also on the app Inspired Choices Network. You also can find me on social media, Facebook, Instagram. I also have business page on Facebook, Creating Abundance with Ease. You can text me, email me through the website, creatingabundancewithease.com. So with allowance, and actually, how much allowance did you have when I started talking about my website and you wanted to get to the show, right? So how much of frustration do you have with yourself when things don't go as fast as you like? What if it's about actually being allowance of yourself, no matter what's going on? in your life, no matter what you choose. Even if you choose something that didn't work. Again, the interesting point of view works marvelous because it's truly point of view. Think of it. It's when we look at things in perspective. A lot of times we look at things through our own lens of judgments. And those lenses have pinholes. Each judgment a pinhole. So nothing that doesn't match the judgment can come into your view. So what if you actually start shifting your view and letting go of the judgments, letting go of those glasses with pinholes? And in the first part, I was talking about that I was looking at the judgments. A lot of times it's just easy by looking and examining it from different perspectives. It's just like, okay, that's stupid, or this is like doesn't work for me anymore. I'm going to let it go. And sometimes it's not as simple. It's easy, but it's not simple. So we have, in Access Consciousness, we have a clearing statement. And you can go to the clearingstatement.com website or accessconsciousness.com website to find out more about the clearing statement. It's a weird phrase, right and wrong, good and bad, puck and pot, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds, which is a short speak for different energies. But you don't have to remember it. You can remember just puck and pod. POC-POD, point of creation and point of destruction. Because in order to create something, we need to destroy, and in order all the points of view have a point of creation and point of destruction. So when you encounter a judgment that's not going away, and you like to keep it, you can always ask, what's the value of holding on to it? And puck and pod, all that comes up. It's very easy, simple, and yet we have investment in a lot of those judgments because we paid for it with all our sweat, blood, all the kind of like years of suffering. So how can we give it up? And we can give it up by being an allowance, being an interesting point of view about that. But no, my limitations are so valuable, a lot of people say. I actually, in one of the intro classes, I haven't encountered that as much as in actual classes. But in intro classes, I've had some people, when I ask, what's the value of holding on to the judgments, to not allowing yourself be who you are? And there was like a few times there were pauses to the point where the energy was not moving, and I would ask about the value, and they're like, again, the pause, and they wouldn't let it go. So I realized that some people, the value of those limitations are so strong, the pull of the limitation is so strong that they're not willing to let it go. And the more we try to push people to let go of their limitation, the less likely they will. So maybe in that moment I was so invested in changing them and helping them and being a superior bitch that I didn't even realize that I was not an allowance. So how much, and that's a lot of times the issue, or the thing that stops either people from changing, or you from changing, or me from changing, is somewhere, somehow there is a resistance, investment in suffering, or just a resistance and reaction to other people helping us. So what if we actually let go of that and looked at being in total allowance of our choices? By being in total allowance of our choices, maybe we can be in total allowance of other people's choices. So how much are we judging ourselves constantly? And I'm not even talking about cognitively. I'm talking about in our heads, there is constant judgment of you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. For a lot of people, I'm not saying everybody. If you're one of those that don't have it, oh my God, I admire you. Now I have less. And a lot of it is not even cognitive, because a lot of it is in subconscious. Think of our subconscious is that iceberg that we can see only this much, and then there is a mountain under the water. And the ship as big as Titanic even got sunk by the iceberg. And how many of us have all those icebergs with a little judgment on the top and then a lot of judgment holding it in place? Because a lot of the judgments are what's called shikyu, which is a secret, hidden, undisclosed, unseen, unheard, covered, all of those things. And it's about allowing ourselves to have those too. This is about being in total allowance, permission, or approval to be who we are. And we do a lot of that. I don't call it work, I call it play, in our classes in Access Consciousness and Akashic Records. We literally go into judgment processes and pock and padding. I love bars, which is the first class in Access Consciousness, where there is 32 points on the head. When you lightly touch, pretty much those judgments melt just by touching those points. And so a lot of times when I'm in resistance and reaction, I kind of like ask, okay, can I have my bars run, please? Seriously, that's kind of like a lot of times out. Like when I have my bars run, after that, for at least a short period of time, I can be in total allowance of myself, other people. I'm not much irritated by a lot of things. And also there is a wonderful question, because a lot of times, why do we get irritated by other people's choices, by our choices? Because we have an enormous awareness of what's going on underneath a lot of things. We are aware of people's thoughts, feelings, and emotions. We are aware of their hidden thoughts, feelings, and emotions, of their actions. Because a lot of times what comes out of people's heads, not necessarily what's in what they say. I'm talking about like their thoughts might be totally different from what they're saying. Because a lot of times you have those people who say, I love you. And in their head, they're like, oh, I hate you. How often do you see that? I see it a lot. Well, not lately, but in the past, let's say. And so a lot of times we would react to what's in their head. They hate you and not even hear I love you. So in those situations, one of the tools I use is, what would it take for my allowance to exceed my awareness with total ease? I have a funny story about that. And I'll tell that story after the break, because it's time for our third and final break of the show. And you've been listening to Creating Abundance with Ease with myself, Helen Gitlevich, on Inspired Choices Network. We'll be right back.
Many of us live our lives based on karma, on the past, and all the unfinished business in our lives. What would you choose if you did not have karma, or if you could choose what you desired instead? By tuning into Creating Abundance with Ease radio show with Dr. Helen Gitlevich, You'll receive tools and inspiration you can use to create the abundance in your life. You are an infinite being with infinite choices. Are you ready to have ease with creating abundance? Listen for Creating Abundance with Ease radio show every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain, and 9 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
This is the Creating Abundance with Ease show with Dr. Helen Gitlevich. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email by sending to helen.g@att.net. Now, back to the program.
Welcome forward, everyone. I'm Dr. Helen Gitlevich on Creating Abundance with Ease, and today our show topic is what is allowance? And before we went on the break, in the first 3 parts of the show, we were talking about the difference between allowance and acceptance. We were talking about a lot of things, how to deal with difficult people by using interesting point of view. I have this interesting point of view, interesting point of view. They have this interesting point of view, interesting point of view. I have this interesting point of view, that they have this interesting point of view. And before we went on the last break, I promised to say, to tell a story about asking for more allowance greater than awareness. And I was driving with a friend, and in front of me was a car. And the guy was driving erratically and driving me nuts. Because he would slow down, he would speed up, almost like he was trying to get into a car accident on purpose. I was trying to pass him, but I couldn't, and he would go below the speed limit. And I'm like, okay, what would it take, universe, what would it take for my allowance to be greater than my awareness? And we turn the corner, and finally I'm able to speed up and go faster, and guess what? It was like, woo, 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 a police. So I'm like, I'm sorry, officer. Yeah, I know I was trying to pass this guy because he was driving erratically. He's like, yeah, but he was going with the speed limit. So guess what? My allowance became very high. And didn't matter what my awareness was. I was driving with within speed limit after getting a ticket. So universe sometimes answers in a weird way. But what if it was as simple as asking and actually choosing it instead of getting a ticket? And I know my show is coming to the end, but it's not the end, because next week we will be in the air again, same place, same time. If you're watching it or listening in the recording, it's every Wednesday at 11 o'clock Central Standard Time or Daylight Saving Time, and 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You can find out more on Inspired Choices Network. Also on my website, Creating Abundance with Ease, you also can sign up for a newsletter on the website by downloading expansion exercise. And next week's topic is going to be limitless or normal. We'll talk a little bit about what is normal, and we are infinite being, and do we actually have a limit, or we're playing normal? So let's play on that topic next week if you dare. Also, classes coming up within the next couple of weeks. There is I'm doing a pop party of possibilities for body whispering class that Dr. Dane here is doing in Mexico, which means that we'll be listening and watching him while he facilitates, and I'll be facilitating with him. Also, Access Facelift class on October 9 if you would like to look and feel younger. And it's not just cosmetics, it's very healing class. It's a full day class on October 9th. Also 3-day body class in Taiwan in November, and wherever else in the world, when the world opens up a little bit more, there will be more classes scheduled. And with allowance, and that's actually part of being an allowance of everything that is going on in the world. So look at what's going on in the world, and again, let's do that wonderful exercise we started with, I think in part 2, interesting point of view. I have this interesting point of view, and let's talk about what's going on in the world with social isolation, with COVID. Doesn't matter if you're pro-vaccine, against vaccine. I'm not going to talk about that, but just be an allowance of everybody's choices. Interesting point of view. I have this interesting point of view. Interesting point of view. They have this point of view. Interesting point of view. I have this interesting point of view, that they have this interesting point of view. Whew. And let's do it one more time. Interesting point of view. I have this interesting point of view about everything that's going on in the world. Interesting point of view. They have this interesting point of view of what's going on in the world. Interesting point of view. I have this interesting point of view, that they have this interesting point of view about what's going on in the world. And you can always add POC and POT, point of creation, point of destruction, and we talked about that in the previous 2 parts. And it doesn't matter what the point of view is. It doesn't matter if it's life and death. There was a class that Dr. Dane did in, I think it was July, if I'm not mistaken. It was a telecall class where he talked about difference between acceptance and allowance. And it was interesting to see that he was talking about that a lot of people say, yeah, it's an interesting point of view, except or especially. And especially a lot of times it's life and death, or especially in this situation, especially money, especially this. What if it doesn't matter? What if it's nothing is special, nothing is as special? What if you can use that tool no matter what's going on in your life? And I'm not saying it will work. I'm not saying it won't. Just play with that. And again, no expectations. Don't go into that, okay, I'm going to change the situation by doing this. This is not about changing the situation. This is about actually changing your attitude. It's about changing what's going on for you and how much you are invested in the outcome. And I'm so grateful for you to be on the show, either live or watching or listening it later. And our show is coming to the end. And as I said, you can find me on creatingabundancewithiz.com. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Message me, we'll talk. And next week, we'll be talking about limitless or normal, and how many of us play normal or actually not willing to be limitless. So thank you, and we will be back next week. Also, check out the classes that's coming up. Check out the new tools on my YouTube channel. I have lots of free Zooms there, free stuff, and I will see you next week. Bye.
Thank you for choosing to listen to Creating Abundance with Ease radio show. Dr. Helen Gitlevich will return next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain, and 9 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have fun using the tools of the week in your life and start creating magic in your life and your body.